Now, the number one issue that students face in AFM is their time management. It's a really time-pressured exam. You've got loads to do. So what I've done is I've recorded this video of me working through a hedging question. Everyone loves hedging, so it's a really good topic to recap anyway. And I've worked through it from start to finish in one go. So I've done it to time, as if I were doing it in the exam. Now, this isn't going to be perfect. I've made spelling mistakes. I could see them as I was typing at times, and that's fine. I want to replicate exactly what I do in the exam. I wouldn't go back and change those. I wouldn't worry about it. You've just got to keep moving. It is really, really up against it in terms of time. Also, my answers are going to be way shorter and more concise than the examiner's answers. Have you seen the examiner answers sometimes? They're massive. So these huge model answers they provide, they don't do those to time. They're not done within the time allocation. So they're there to help you and to advise and to give you more knowledge, but they're not realistic as to what you can achieve. So I've done it exactly as I would. So look out for like the length of my paragraphs. Look at how I structure my answers. And that's one of my biggest tips around hedging questions in general, is if you've got a good structure, like I offer my students, so you can see when I'm doing my options, you've got the set up the hedge, arrange the hedge, result of the hedge. I do a real step-by-step approach. Same with the swap. I do exactly the same thing. I do like preferred or non-preferred, then you do the savings, the target rate, and then the swap. I've got step-by-step approaches which make it so much quicker and so much easier to pick up those marks. So enjoy the video and see how I work through this question from start to finish. Okay, so we've got our little bit, exhibits, Lurgshall, we've got some hedging. Oh, it's a hedging question, okay, and chief exec's views, no problem. Right, start with the requirements. And they want us to compare the results of hedging 84 million, that number's going to be important, using the options and the swap. Okay, that's what I've got to do with the results already obtained using the forward rate agreement and futures. So I'm not going to have to do those again. Comment on the results. Need to make sure I discuss them. And it says, including how the interest rate swap would work. 15 marks. Okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes on that part. 4 marks for discussion. Got to remember to do that. And then B, criticise the views of the chief exec about the work carried out by the Treasury and the staff required to do this work, 5 marks. Okay, fine. And then I need to remember to do conclusions, assumptions, and commercial acumen. No problem. Okay, so I've got a hedging question. Hedging 84. The fact it says swap suggests it's going to be interest rates. Let's have a quick read of the exhibits. It tells us a bit about the company, Lurgshall. Listed electronics. I'll try and use that if I can. New chief exec. Number of plans to expand. Okay. Costs. Okay. Centralized treasury. We'll need that in part B probably. First major investment we're going to oversee is an investment in facilities. Application specific components. They're going to have to borrow. Okay. That means we need a loan. Let's have a look at the hedging information. We're going to need this in part A. Now the 1st of May. That's going to be important. I might write that down actually. So let's just get my spreadsheet set up. Everything nicely laid out. Like so. Doesn't matter too much. I'm just going to label it. So you've got part A. That's where all my calcs were, wasn't it? So it's now the 1st of May. So I'm just going to make notes as I read it. Need to borrow 84 million on the 1st of September for a period of 6 months. Okay. Starting on the 1st of September. They can borrow at a variable rate, so they plan to borrow at a variable rate plus, so it's the base rate plus 50 basis points, which is 0.5%. So I'll make a note of that, that's the current rate. It's currently 4.5, but is expected to rise by up to 0.6%. So I'll add that on, so it could rise to 5.1. Okay, so they're my little notes there. So they've currently explored hedging using forward rate agreement or futures. Okay, the result is there. So the forwards would cost that and the futures would cost that. So they've already done that for me. I don't need to do anything with those, fine. Then they also want to use options, as it says, and then potentially swaps. So not previously used swaps. That's something we could discuss later. And they found a counterparty fund. Right, here are the options. We've got the current price. Okay, that looks fairly standard. We've got September, so that's fine. We've only got one strike price, which makes life a little bit easier. Contract size is 2 million. They're 3-month options on futures, which is fine. And it tells us there that futures and options are set at the end of each month. Basis diminishes to 0. That means I'm going to need to do that basis working, and then I can comment on that because it's in a bit of an assumption. There's no basis risk. It can be assumed that there is no basis risk. I need to challenge that. And then this is all the information for the swap. So we've got a counterparty, as always. We've got the central base rate plus 1.5% or fixed. That's for the counterparty. And for us, they've quoted us a fixed rate of 5.6. Fine. And we know that our variable rate, it told us, was up the top, wasn't it? And it tells us that we can do that up here. It told us, where has it gone? Oh, there we go. So we have a variable rate of the central base rate plus 50 basis points. Fine, I'll need that for the swap. And there's a bank charge of 10 basis points. No problem. I need to look out for that and remember to do that at the end. And then they're going to share equally the potential gains from the swap. No problems. Okay, right, that's all fine. We've got everything in there. Just have a quick look at this one. We're going to need this one for part B more, aren't we? So the new chief exec. So this is about the Treasury department. Just checking there's nothing in there that I particularly need for part A. I'll come back to that later. So we need that for that bit. I'm not going to worry too much about it for now. Okay, so we're going to start by doing this. I'm just going to remind myself of the requirement one more time. Is compare the results of hedging that using options and the swap with the result already obtained. So I'm going to go straight in with this. I'm just going to label this as part A, like so. Not too much I need to do in terms of discussion initially, but I will get this set up as part of my planning time. So I do allow myself 9 minutes to plan. I'm currently just over 5 minutes in, so I'm doing well. So part A, what we're going to need to do is do a little bit of an assumption. I'm going to state a key assumption because we need to be skeptical. So I'm just going to write down, just remind myself to do some key assumptions. And then we're going to compare the hedging products. And then I'm going to do a quick conclusion because it did say compare the results and comment on the results like that, and 4 marks for discussion. So I need to make sure I'm doing that. And again, that will help me to get that analysis and evaluation mark as well. And the reason I did that assumption, by the way, is because there are skepticism marks. So I'm just going to put that there as well. So for now, I've just set up just more to remind me when I answer part A, I'm going to need those. And then I'll do part B. I'm going to worry about that later. And for part A, remember, I've given myself 15 marks. So 30 minutes I'm going to give myself to do the calculations. Okay, right, I am all set up. What I'm actually going to do is just write here. So I've got 30 minutes from now to do this. So I've got until 36 minutes to do this one on the clock. That includes the discussion. So I'm just going to do that again, just as a quick reminder to myself. Okay, right, I don't know why I wrote part A there. I need to write options. There we go. Let me just zoom in a little bit. So we're going to start with my options. And we've got all the hedging information here that we need. Lovely. And for options, I always do the same approach. So I'm just going to do my same approach as always. Start off by arranging the hedge. Or setup, in fact, I call it. And that's going to be call or put. Which expiry date do we need? Which strike price or exercise price, whatever you want to call it. And the number of contracts. I actually put that there, doesn't really matter too much. So that'll be my setup. Then I'm going to arrange the hedge. So that'll be my step 2. Always use this step-by-step approach for my options questions. It's really nice. And we'll do that. And don't forget, we're going to need to pay a premium because it's an options question. So I'm going to make a note to myself to remind me to do that. And then in step 3, we do the result of the hedge, which will happen on the 1st of September. So we'll do that. So there we go. I've set up my almost little template. And within the result, we're going to have our transaction. And then we'll have the result of our options here. And a bit further down, we'll have our total. Okay. So that's my standard template. Good to go to fill it in. So let's start with call or put. So it gives us both calls and puts, so I do need to decide. So in this one, we're borrowing, aren't we? It tells us that we are going to be borrowing 84 million. It tells us that at the top there. So borrowers sell. Britney Spears, that's my way of remembering that. So borrowers sell. And remember, sell is always put. If it was buy, it'd be a call. So we need to put options. So that'll be my first point. So borrowers sell Britney Spears, depositors buys David Beckham. So just check in. We're definitely borrowing, great. And they need to sell futures, therefore we need put options. Expiry date in this one, it hasn't given us a choice. They're only giving us options on September futures. I'll write that just to be clear, but that's fine, which is fine because the loan is starting on the 1st of September. So using September ones is perfect. Right, number of contracts. 84 million is the amount we're hedging. Each contract is 2 million. So I need to do 84 over 2 million. But remember, this is for 6 months, isn't it? So this is a period of 6 months and each contract only lasts for 3 months. So what I'm going to do here is you do the amount we need to hedge, which is 84, divided by the contract size, which is 2 million, times by the number of months of the loan, which is 6, over the length of each contract, which is 3. And that'll give me 84 contracts. And then the strike price is 95.25. So that's the rate that we can use, which in other words, by the way, is 4.75%. I quite like doing it as a percentage. If you just do 100 minus that, if I just do that like that, in fact, there you go. 4.75% is the rate that we're locking into. Brilliant. So we've set up the hedge. That's a good start. So we need to sell. Or put options. We're buying put options in this case. We're obtaining put options, and it's September, 84 contracts at 95.25. So I might just write that down just to be clear. We need 84 September put options at strike price of 95.25. Right, now we need to pay the premium. So we've said we need put options. So it's going to be this one on the right, the 0.411. And these are annual percentages. So as always with the premium, you're just going to do the premium rate, which is 0.411%, times by the number of contracts, which is 84. Now I'm just going to type that in rather than click on the cell because you do need to round it. So it needs to be 84. So it's the rate times the number of contracts times the contract size, which is 2 million, times by 3 over 12. Remember, each contract only lasts for 3 months. So I'm going to do that. Now, because this is a payment, I am going to make it negative, so it's a cost. And it's 3 months because each contract only lasts for 3 months, not 6 months here. So there we go, that comes out as our premium. Lovely. Now we're going to do the result of the hedge on the 1st of September. So the transaction, that's as if we hadn't hedged at all. So this will just be whatever the rate is on the day, and it is going to be negative because they are going to be paying it. Now it says in the requirement, let's just go back and remind myself. It says the result of the hedging. So what was the interest rate going to be again? It tells us that hedging a rise in the base rate of 0.6%. Okay, it's currently 4.5, but don't forget we borrow at 0.5% above that. So we're going to do the 4.5% base rate. It's going to go up by 0.6%, so that's 5.1, but then we borrow at 0.5% above that. 50 basis points is 0.5%. So you're going to have all of that going on, the rise and the fact that we borrow 50 basis points above, times by the amount that we're borrowing, which is 84 million. And then we're going to times that by 6 over 12 because that's how long our loan is lasting for. So we're not dealing with contracts here, so it's going to be times 6 over 12. So that will give me the amount of interest I'd have to pay if we didn't hedge at all. Then for the options, now because they are put options, you're always going to sell initially. So put and sell are best friends. So we're always going to sell initially, and we're going to put in the price that we said, which is 95.25. So that was the strike price. Then we're going to buy them back. We always close out these. I'm going to buy them back at a price, but I don't know what that is. And as always, we're given this little clue that we're going to need to do a separate working. So we're going to need to do a basis working there to work out what that rate's going to be. Now I'm going to clearly label this. So I'm going to leave a bit of space because I want to do my total and stuff. I'll call it working 1, basis working, and I'll underline it so the markers can see that this is where the number's from. And then I'm going to do my standard basis working table, which is where I put in the spot rates, I put in the futures price, and then that gives me a basis. I'm then going to put now the futures expiry date. Sorry, transaction date first. Then we put in the futures expiry date next. like so. Okay, it's now let's just remind ourselves, the 1st of May. So we'll call that month 0. So that's the 1st of May. The transaction's happening on the 1st of September. That's when we're borrowing our money. So how many months is that from there? I'm going to count on my fingers. So we've got all of May, June, July, August. So it's another 4 months from now. And then the futures expire at the end of September. So they are September. It's always at the end of the month. So that'll be 30th of September, which will be 5 months from now. Brilliant. Right, the current spot rate that's today's rate. It says the base rate is currently 4.5%. Now, I can forget about the fact that we borrow at 50 basis points above that whenever I'm doing the basis working. So I'm just doing 100 minus the current spot rate, which is 4.5. So we're going to need to use the futures price when we do this, not the option strike price or anything. That's why they've given us the price of these futures, and it's 95.05. So that's the current futures price, is 95.05. Now you always do the spot rates less futures, so basis is 0.45. Now we work out the unexpired basis. Remember, that's just going to shrink down to 0 over the next 5 months. So it's going from here to here. And on the 1st of September, we're going to have 1 month left. So you've got 4 and you've got month 5. So we're going to have 1 month left. So it's going to be 1 over 5. That's the unexpired basis times by that. That's how long is going to be left on the 1st of September, how much is going to be left of that if you imagine it depreciating down to 0. So that's our unexpired basis. Now what we're going to do in here is put what the spot rate will be on the 1st of September. And do you remember we said it's going to be 4.5%, but it's rising up by 0.6. So that's going to be 100 minus the 5.1. Now I have to do these in this format, not as percentages, otherwise everything's backwards. And then my futures price will just be the balance. So that minus that, so it's the difference between those two, the balancing figure is going to be my futures price, which is 94.81. So that's what goes into here. So I can just reference that cell, and then we can see if we're going to exercise it or not. Now, always make the buy negative. So I'm going to do sell minus the buy. So always take off the buy because you're paying it. And it is positive, which means it's a gain. So we need to exercise the option. I need to mention that because otherwise I won't get a mark. Now the gain as a percentage is 0.44. So the gain in total is going to be that as a percentage. I'm going to put a percentage on there, times by the number of contracts, which was 84, times by the contract size, which was 2 million, times by 3 over 12, because each contract, anything to do with contracts is always 3 months, not 6 there. It's always going to be 3. If we do that, we end up with a number. So the total is going to be our transaction plus the gain plus that premium. So remember to deduct the premium, but because I made it negative, it's going to be taken off. And that gives me my total interest for the options. Now, it's always good to make that bold. So I'll just make that bold just to show the markers. And I can actually, just while I'm here, tidy up these slightly. I quite like the little comma button there. Just to put a comma in just to make it a bit easier to see. Now, as an annual percentage, just because they gave us these as an annual percentage, this is going to be a lot easier if I convert this into percentage. That's for 6 months. That's the total cost over 6 months. So let's do that times by 12 over 6. That gives me my annual interest. And then divide that by the amount that we are hedging. I don't really need the brackets, but I'll put them in just in case, which is 84 million. That will give me it as a percentage, which comes out as 5.57%. So that gives me something, and again, it's reassuring. Look, it's in line with those, isn't it? It's quite similar to these rates up here. So that's good. Excellent. Right, on to our swap. I haven't got too much time to dwell on that and think about what it means and so on. We can worry about that later. On to the swap. So again, step-by-step approach. First thing I'm going to do is the preferred and non-preferred rates. So I'm going to set up a little table. And in this one, we've got what we called Lurgshall, and then we've got a counterparty. So that's fine. So I always set up them like this. We're going to have our preferred rates, and then we're going to have our non-preferred rates. And I'm going to put Lurgshall, let's call them Lurg, and then we've got our counterparty. Now, just thinking logically, it doesn't specify which is the preferred and which is the non-preferred rate, which is fine, not too much of an issue. Lurgshall think, and they're worried that the rates are going to go up, so they're going to prefer to fix, aren't they? If they think that interest rates are going up and they are borrowing money, they're going to prefer to fix. So that will be their preferred rate, which is 5.6%. So I'll put that in there. And then their non-preferred rate will just be the other one. Now that is their current rate. So the current rate is the central base rate plus 50 basis points. So I'll call the base rate B plus 50 basis points is 0.5%. Now the counterparty, I then just put, because that's fixed, I'll just put a floating there. The counterparty was the base rate plus 1.5%. So that's the base rate plus 1.5%. And then the non-preferred rate will be the other one, fixed of 6.1. Right, add those together. 1.5 plus 5.6 is 7.1, isn't it? So that's going to be B plus 7.1% is the total if they took out their preferred. Add those two together. B plus 0.5 plus 6.1 is B plus 6.6%. Brilliant. Now the non-preferred should always be cheaper. Otherwise there'd be no point in doing this. So if we just check that. Again, if you got that the wrong way around, and you didn't sort of clock that they'd prefer to fix, it doesn't matter too much. You just know that the non-preferred total will always be the cheaper one. And if we do that, they will save 0.5%, won't they, in total by taking out the non-preferred. So that's the total. So we can then work out the savings for each company. Do you remember it told us they'll share them equally? Let's just check that that is the case, which is fine. So 0.5% divided by 2. So they're going to save 0.245% each. Now we do the target rates. Which are the preferred rates less the saving. So for Lurg, it's going to be the 5.6% minus 0.25%, which is 5.35%. I'm doing that in my head, but if you want to be safe, just do it like that. You can just see it like that. And then the counterparty, theirs is going to be B plus 1.5% is their preferred rate. And you take off the saving of 0.25%, and that comes out as B plus 1.25% is going to be their target rate. Now I ignore the bank fees until the end with my approach. So I am very conscious that we need to take off a bank fee of 10 basis points, but we'll do that later. Right, now we arrange the swap. So we're going to start by paying the non-preferred to the bank. Then one company will pay the other. So I'll do Lurg, pays the counterparty. Then the counterparty pays Lurg. And then that should end up with a target rate. Then once we've got that, then we'll take off the bank fee and that'll give us our total cost. So I'm going to do the bank fee afterwards. And then I do Lurg. I might call them their proper name, Lurgshall, for this one. And then we've got the counterparty. Like so. Again, this is my standard template for doing an interest rate swap. It works really well. So we're going to pay their non-preferred to the bank. That's the finance they take out because it is cheaper in total. So we're going to use these rates. So whatever you put up there, we're just going to put again here. I'm going to make them negative because that makes it a bit easier when you do your swap. Now I'll put the little apostrophe there, by the way, because then it just formats it as text in the software. Just avoids any weird formatting issues, but it'll probably be all right if it didn't. So that's that. And then the counterparty pays 6.1%. So again, I'm just going to put a bracket there, 6.1%. Right, then I jump to the target rate, which are these numbers here. So we know that Lurgshall need to pay 5.35%, and the counterparty needs to pay B plus 1.25%. So this is what we're aiming for. Now we need to do the little swap in between. Now I've put there Lurg pays the counterparty. It doesn't matter which way round these two go, really. but I'm going to say Lurg pays the counterparty something. Now, the easiest way probably is just to cancel out that 6.1. So I'm going to make the counterparty receive 6.1%. Now, this bit here, you can do loads of different ways. It doesn't matter as long as both sides balance. But I'm just going to make that, them pay them 6.1%. So it comes out of there and into there. You see that then just cancels out nicely. So then whatever that is, I can just put in here. So now, if they just pay them B plus 1.25%, if you add up both sides, that will work. So if you add that together, it's B plus 6.6 is what they're paying, but then they receive B plus 1.25 and they end up paying that. Those two cancel out, they pay that and they end up with that. So both sides balance. Again, loads of ways of doing that. That's just the way I like to do it. It's easiest. Then we've got the bank fee, which is 10 basis points, and it does say to each individual party, doesn't it? So it's not between them. So we've got to pay 0.1% each. Copy and paste that, save a little bit of time. So the total cost, once you take that into account, is going to be 5.45% for Lurgshall. And for them, it's going to be B plus 1.35%. So that is our answer. Make it bold. Job done. So that there, that 5.45% is what I'm going to need to talk about. Lovely. So that is my swap done. Worked through that, done all the steps. Lovely. Now we've got a few minutes left to do the discussion for this part A that we're doing. So remember, we need to comment on our results and then show all relevant calculations, etc. 4 marks for discussion. But I also want to do a bit of skepticism and also a little conclusion. So I'm just going to jump into that now. Now, quite a nice thing when you're doing this is to do a little summary. Just before I do that, I'm just going to write a key assumption. Calculation is based on, I'm going to write estimated actually. Now, by assuming that, now do you remember the phrasing they're using here? I can just copy that. Basis diminishes to 0 at contract to maturity at a constant rate. And there is no basis risk and no margin requirements as well, which is something for the futures we could talk about later. This may not hold true in reality, which could or which would affect the cost of the options. I'll put total. Something like that. So talk about the impact of it. I'm not just saying this assumed basis, there's no basis risk. Talk about the impact. That'll do. Right, on to our hedging products. So we can do a little, what I was saying a minute ago, we could do a little summary. So the FRAs will cost us 5.38%. The futures would cost us 5.36%. Our options, who can remember what that was? I can't. Options were 5.57. So that's why it's really nice having that as a percentage. Otherwise, it's quite hard to compare it. And then our swap, remember, we're looking for Lurgshall, so the swap would cost 5.45%. Now, what I love to do in a question like this, when you're discussing your hedging products, is just go through them one by one. So it's discuss that, 4 marks. We've got 4 products, so we can pretty much just go through them. But I do want to do a quick conclusion at the end as well. So I'm just going to go through them one by one and say what's sort of good and bad about them. So I'll just break up into subheadings almost. So the forward rate agreement, what can we say about that? FRAs would provide, it's always good to mention the company name, Lurgshall. As this is a This is what we call a perfect hedge. There's no however, they would be locked into this rate even if the loan then wasn't needed anymore. Did it say what the loan is for? So they wanted to expand the company, didn't they? So it said they're investing in this, the new facilities, even if the so it's quite nice just for commercial acumen just to link it to the scenario bit. So I've just done that. Okay, now futures. Let's talk about them. So these are the cheapest. Worth saying that, isn't it? Remember, that's good because it's a loan. So futures. I'm going to be a little bit skeptical here as well, you know, because they just gave us that, didn't they? So it just said, they gave us that there, but they said futures would be 5.36, and it just says it has been investigated. So I've just been a little bit skeptical there, just saying they're good. But yeah, we just want a little bit more detail about those. Then let's talk about the options. So I'm just going through them one by one. The most expensive product at, and again, it's good to mention the numbers. So 5.57%. However, they could be the best choice if interest rates actually fall, as they would allow Lurgshall to benefit from the favourable rate movements. And it doesn't really say, it just says that they're expected, doesn't it? It says it's expected to rise by 0.6%. So, yeah, they might be all right. And then we've got the swap. So we can talk about that. The swap is relatively cheap. It does come with risks slightly, so you could talk about your downsides of interest rate swaps. Or goes bankrupt. What was the name of that bank again? Burdham. Again, just being a little bit cautious. Just saying we need to cover those. Okay, so I've just talked about each. Now, again, there are other things I could have mentioned for each. Not a lot, just a little bit under each. And then I'm going to go with a conclusion. Now, what is best? It's tricky to say, isn't it? It's probably, I might go with the forward, you know, because there's the futures and the options have quite a lot of estimates in them. The forwards are pretty certain. So overall, Lurgshall should use FRAs, as they provide the most certainty with no basis estimates, and are easy to set up in a range or something like that. That'll do. So just a little conclusion. Job done. Okay, right, that's it for part A. Let me just double check the requirements, make sure I've answered everything. So compare the results. Yep, great. Using the options and the swap. A relevant calculation, including how that would work. Yep. And then I've done my discussion of each, and then I've also done my conclusion. Lovely stuff. Right, on to part B. Quick check of the time. Yeah, we're okay, aren't we? So I said in my spreadsheet, I've got until 36 minutes to do part A. I'm well within time, so this is nice. I can have a quick sip of water, you know. I'm just going to have a quick drink at this point because I've earned myself a couple of minutes. Right, let's go. On to part B. So, part B. I'm not going to need my spreadsheet for part B. It's going to be all be in here. And part B was criticise the views, okay, of the chief exec. Not sort of evaluate or discuss. It was just straight up criticise. So I'm going to be quite critical about the work carried out by the Treasury Department and the staff required to do this work. Now, as soon as I see that word "and," I love the opportunity to break things into bits. So I'm going to do the work. I'm going to split. I haven't even read the exhibit yet, but I'm going to do the work carried out, and then I'm going to do the staff required as separate headings, because that way 5 marks becomes, you know, like a 2 and a 3, which becomes a lot more bearable. So now I'm going to look at the chief exec's views. Not read these yet, so let's see what this chief exec is saying. So made the following comments. I understand the Treasury Department has a number of day-to-day responsibilities, including investing surplus funds for the short-term liquidity and hedging against currency and interest rate risk. Okay, so we might need to question that a little bit and sort of say there's probably a bit more to it than that. And then these tasks could be carried out by the junior, less experienced members of the department. Okay, that's a bit dubious. I do not see why the department needs to employ experienced, expensive staff, as it does not contribute to the strategic success of the company. Okay, right, I'm definitely going to challenge that because that's nonsense. Okay, so 5 marks. I'm going to aim for 5 things in here. And I want to be really getting those commercial acumen marks. I'm going to make sure I link it to the scenario. I'm also being skeptical of what this chief exec has said. So I'm going to start by talking about the work carried out and say, it's sort of like they're downplaying it a little bit, aren't they? That it's just day-to-day responsibilities. So I'm going to say Treasury work is more than just, and I'll put that in quotes, day-to-day responsibilities. I'm almost a bit offended on behalf of the Treasury Department here, so I'll be have to be careful not to get too angry. More than day-to-day. So tasks such as, what did they say? Short-term liquidity management. They're like, short-term liquidity not important. Well, it is. To the survival of Lurgshall. Okay, so there we go, work carried out, so I'll question that one. Next up, what else have they said? Oh yeah, hedging. So again, they're sort of saying day-to-day and like hedging and stuff. So yeah, the Treasury team perform hedging activities. Now what I'm going to do is link to that investment. Again, I really want to use the information. So the investment in the facilities to produce application-specific components. I might copy and paste that, you know. I don't really like copy and pasting from the... So no, actually I won't. The examiner said they don't really like copy and pasting, so I won't do that. As can be seen with the investment in the new facilities for the, I've now literally forgotten what it said, application specific components. Just managing risk is very important to protect against such as interest rate rises. So I'm sort of saying that this is, yeah, it's absolutely crucial. It's not just a day-to-day thing, is it? It's much more important than that. And then the other thing, just picking up on that, it does not contribute to the strategic success of the company. It does. So Lurgshall long-term funding for expansion. Now remember, again, I'm just going to go back to here. It says in the first bit, the very first bit, plans to expand the company. So I can refer to that. The Treasury team. Now I can see I've spelled negotiated wrong, but I'm going to keep going because I haven't got time to fix it. Okay, so that's the work carried out. I've written 3 things under that. That's great. Now the staff requirement, let's just remind ourselves what it said there. These tasks could be carried out by the junior, less experienced members of the department. Now that's looking a bit suspicious. So junior staff are unlikely to have the sufficient knowledge or expertise required to make key decisions. I think it said, going back to here, they're a listed company, which is pretty big, isn't it? So it's a large organization. This isn't just a small little place. Likely to be complex and for large amounts of money. So appropriately skilled staff need to be used. And then the whole argument in here, just thinking about, it says expensive staff. So it's sort of saying, oh, we'll just use cheap people. So I'll just make the point that senior or like experienced may cost more than junior staff. But Lurgshall could easily recover the additional costs by making that'll have to do making I'm trying to think of a better word, but making will do better decisions, for example in short-term investments that provide a greater return. So I'm sort of just making the point that actually it might be a bit of a false economy, as they call it, to have these
cheaper staff, because the more experienced staff might be able to make more money. Right, there you go. I've made 5 points. I'm pretty happy with that. I've got a couple of minutes left. So what I could do, I was going to almost do a little recommendation here just to wrap up. So it's probably just quite nice. I've written 5 things. That'll be fine. This is a little bit of a luxury. So to spend time with the Treasury team to understand their role and importance to Lurgshall's strategy before deciding to make any changes. So needs to do a bit of shadowing, go there for a day before they do that. Right, let's just check I've answered everything. So it's always good just to do a quick check. So requirements: criticise the views of the chief exec about the work carried out by the Treasury and the staff required to do this work. 5 marks. I've actually said 5 things and a little bonus bit. I did know the results of the hedge using options and the swap, comparing them, did my discussion. Great. Have I been skeptical? Yep. I've challenged the chief exec's things in here. I've also done an assumption up here around the basis thing, and I've also challenged a little bit in here around the futures figure. So you've definitely been skeptical. Commercial acumen, have I linked to the scenario yet? Look how many times I mentioned Lurgshall. Done all of that. And yeah, really use the information in the scenario as well. So talking about the fact that they're listed, like picking up on things like that is always good. So yeah, really using the scenario as well. There we go, job done.
And that's it. That was intense. I really feel for you guys doing the full exam. It's quite exhausting, isn't it? Concentrating, really working as fast as you can in that time. But as you can see, it is achievable. And when you see my finished answers, again, they're way more concise, but that's absolutely fine, not an issue at all. So really think about practicing questions to time. That's absolutely key in AFM, is making sure you do practice questions against the clock, because in the exam, you've got very limited time. You've just got to be as quick as you possibly can. Also, just think about those easy marks. Some marks in that question were harder than others. So if you get a bit stuck, just guess a number and move on. That's okay. I didn't really have to do that in this question because there weren't any particularly fiddly bits. But your basis working figure, you know that little table I did for basis working? That's 1 mark to work out that futures price in there. Again, that's not amazing value, is it, in terms of time? So if you had to guess that one and just keep doing the other stuff, that would have been fine. Not an issue at all. So keep an eye out for more videos like this on my YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be offering loads more advice for students who want to pass AFM. Also check me out on LinkedIn. I do loads of advice on LinkedIn. So nearly every day I'm posting tips on study, mindset, AFM specific things as well. So check me out on LinkedIn. It's Andrew Mower. And I do have my own AFM courses. So if you want me to help you pass AFM, including WhatsApp support from me personally, 7 days a week, then just get in touch. Best of luck with AFM.